Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome in, Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. We are ready to get things underway on this Wednesday, the 21st of May. Hopefully that's exactly what you want, to be sitting here on the 21st of May on a Wednesday listening to me talk about Michigan football and a little bit of basketball. Always a good time. Very enthusiastic about today's show. Feel like there's going to be a lot of good things to go over, including thinking about last year and things that Michigan can take from last year and use for this year. Not the quarterback, not the passing yards. That would be one thing that they would not want to take from last year to use for this year. But I came up with a few things that I will put out there for all of you to consider and think about. Speaking of thinking, what is Yaxel thinking? Lindenborg is got a few more days before he has to make a decision on whether he's going pro or whether he's headed to Ann Arbor to make the Michigan basketball team one of the favorites in the Big Ten this year. We'll find out soon enough when it's going to come down to for Yaxel. A lot of Michigan fans have their fingers crossed when it comes down to it, hoping that he ends up matriculating to Ann Arbor and then has a great year and ends up being a lottery pick and it works out for Yaxel. But we'll get to that coming up. The big news, it happened yesterday, and Michigan gets a big catch from a tight end out of Billings. And we will get to that straight ahead. In fact, right now, here he is. Matt Ludwig, 4-star tight end. Nothing but good news here. Good news in that Michigan was looking to continue to add top players, considering that they were off the road and just got back on the road. The timing couldn't be any better. If you're someone, and you are someone who follows recruiting extremely close, you get a little lull from the end of the season, the bowl game, and into spring. But every once in a while, when there's a commitment, it gets everybody fired up about the team, and everything feels good. Sometimes for more than just a moment. Sometimes it is just for a moment, but it just gets everybody feeling good about the program. And I think that's what happened with Ludwig here. And Michigan has now, what are we looking at? 6, I believe. Let's put it up on the screen. Take a look at it. 6 Michigan has with Ludwig, the tight end out of Billings, Montana. Previous to that, it was Brady Smigel, the quarterback out of California. A lot of people talking about Smigel, and that's to be expected when you have a quarterback and you have a wide range of ranking for that quarterback there. Lots of opinions flying around. Michigan, Scott Smiley. Before that, it was Boney, a 3-star edge out of D.C. Boney, the only 3-star ranked. Everybody else a 4, or in Smigel's case, a 5. McWhorter out of Georgia. Almost everyone thought he was going to Alabama, myself included. And then early on, Pyle, a wide receiver out of Texas. And then Brody Jennings was the first to commit, a defensive back out of Jacksonville. And I think Jennings is taking some visits, which have people up in arms. And I don't know. I don't think you should be up in arms. If somebody, I know you'd rather, I would myself, if a kid was going to commit, I would say, are you going to take any more visits? And if he said, yeah, I'd say, well, just go ahead and don't commit. But I don't know. Sometimes they commit and, they feel like, why don't they go out and get some free trips? And you never know. And that's kind of how it goes. It upsets people. I don't get that upset. And that worked up because Michigan will end up bringing in other players that have committed elsewhere, trying to flip them. And the players that are at Michigan, they'll be going and people will be trying to flip them. And you pay attention a lot more to the guys you lose and are out there than the guys you're thinking, oh yeah, well of course he's going to come to Michigan. You're going to flip him. This is a better place, but then you don't like it. That just goes how it works with recruiting. You like the ones you get. You don't like the ones that are here. You don't want to messing around. But that's a good get for Michigan. You think about the tight end position just over the last few years. How last year, the way Loveland, top 10 pick in the NFL draft. You can go all the way back as far as you want when it comes down to great players. You can go back to Ron Kramer, one of the great tight ends in college football and in football history. But really, Jake Butt, going to go back to him. Michigan has been bringing in tight ends and sending them to the NFL. So it's a good place for Ludwig, and it's a good place for any tight end. You want to go to the NFL, you want to catch the ball, you want to learn how to block, all those kind of things. Great spot for U of M. And so they've got 6. I see nothing but great news there coming down to it. Now, when it comes to last year, here's the question. The question is, you have last year's team. Is there anything that you want to carry over from last year that you would want to bring in this year? And I mentioned the passing game. That would be something that you would not want to bring to this year. And I thought of a few things. And the thing at the top is Wink Martindale. Didn't get off to the greatest start, but Wink is coming back. And Wink pointed to the second half of the Indiana game, where he thought the defense really, came together, started playing to the way that everyone thought that they could play. And then you look, what was the score? It was, so Michigan only gave up 3 points. They lost to Indiana 20-15, but it was 17-3. It could have been 17-3 after the first quarter. It was 17-3 at the half. So Michigan just gave up the 3 points to the Hoosiers in the second half. Then they just gave up 6 in total to Northwestern. Of course, they only gave up 10 to Ohio State. And then they only gave up 13 to Alabama. So Wink's defense, Wink as a coordinator, that's something that you want to, you hope that the players got the grasp, he got the grasp, and that carries over to the start of this year. And you want to get specific with some of that. The defense in the bowl game. So, yeah, it started in the second half against Indiana, but when Michigan played Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl, they did not have Kenneth Grant. They did not have Mason Graham on the defensive line. Everybody on that defense, with the exception of Amir Hall, are players that are coming back. So you got to look at the future. And then Michigan played great against Alabama and Jalen Milroe. You remember they, right off the jump, got a 4 and out, and then they got a fumble, and they got an interception, and then they got another fumble, and then they held, and rightfully so, that we think about Michigan holding Jeremiah Smith to whatever he had, 35 yards in the win against Ohio State in Columbus. They also held Kyle Williams, the wide receiver for Alabama, a great wide receiver. How did he do against Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl? He didn't have 10 yards, 3 catches for 8 yards. So the defense and from the second half of the Indiana game, and then also the second half of the Indiana game, and then the bowl game. That's what you want to bring back for 24. Also, If we didn't have these things, we would still be saying, well, really looking forward to Jordan Marshall, seeing what he can do. Well, we saw what he could do. You gave him 23 carries. He got you 100 yards. And you saw some of those bursts of speed and some short areas and what he was able to do and how he ran the ball. So you don't have to wonder. Now, it is just a small sample size of one game, but it is also Alabama. That wasn't Jordan Marshall in a cameo against Arkansas State early in the season. And you say, well, look, he looked pretty good against Arkansas State. No, he looked good against Alabama. That's got to be worth something. So, and it was the same thing with Sprague out there at right tackle. Had a good game. Looked pretty good. He was just a true freshman out there. Now, as a redshirt freshman, it looks like he's ready to patrol the right side of the Michigan offensive line for the foreseeable future. And you got to feel good about that. That's something that you're taking from 2023 and putting into 24 and something that you feel pretty good about. So that's how I see that. I saw something a week ago or so. It was somebody from the USA Today. They were doing coaching rankings. And they were ranking all of the 18 coaches in the Big Ten. Anybody that's ever done a ranking, you put a ranking out and then you wait, and there's going to be somebody that says, what are you doing? Well, that's a terrible ranking. How could you possibly put this person in front of that? That kind of goes with the territory when you're doing a ranking. And Sharon Moore ended up being 14th on the ranking. Now, Michigan went 7-5, 8-5. With the bowl game. And my first impression was, that's not that, it's not crazy when you start looking at it. But then some of the Michigan fans were like, yeah, it is crazy. Jonathan Smith being in front of Sharon Moore is kind of crazy. And I thought, Sharon's been around for 1 year and won 8 games. And, true enough, he beat Ohio State and beat Alabama. That's why everybody's feeling good. Plus, he was able to flip Underwood. I mean, those 3 things, like you want to add the Northwestern win, fine. You could really just point to flipping Underwood, because after that, everything started to look up. They beat Northwestern, they beat Ohio State, they beat Alabama, and then, you're off and running that way. And, you take a little closer inspection. You're like, Jonathan Smith won double figure of games one time. He beat Oregon when he was at Oregon State. And, so he got the Michigan State job. I didn't feel like it was anything to get really upset about. But then somebody pointed out, hey, Sharon Moore's got more than 1 win against Ohio State. He's got 2 wins. And then he's got not only the top 10, Ohio State was ranked number 2 last year, but he's got 2 top 10 wins over Ohio State. And he's got 3 top 10 wins when you add in Penn State. Penn State in 2023, Michigan's undefeated season, when Sharon Moore was the head coach, Penn State was in the top 10. So he's got 3 top 10 wins, and he's only going into his second year. When you put that into play, and for a second, I thought, that's just going to be Michigan fans that are thinking that way, that Sharon Moore gets the credit for those 2023 wins. Other fan bases would say, well, Harbaugh was there all week. Sharon just coached the game. And I thought, well, that's fair. And then, you think, well, from Sunday to Friday, it was Harbaugh. And then Sharon got up on the horse on game day and got the win. So, how are you balancing it? Are you giving them a half a win? It's not that deep, to think about. So instead of assigning some kind of point total, like, well, he gets 0.5, for those wins, I think you have to look at it and say, do you give him credit for the wins that he coached in 2023 against Penn State and against Ohio State? Are you either giving him credit for those wins or not? And so I had to ask myself that. I said, I'm going to give him the credit. And that was a tough. I know what goes on, or that during the week. No, he wasn't the head coach, but he was there Saturday, and the pressure of going on the road when you lose your coach an hour before, I don't know, a half hour. They're in flight to Happy Valley, and then they're like, "Yep, Sharon, you're the head coach." That's a hell of a lot of pressure. And then the way that he coached in that game and the way that he coached against Ohio State, he was going for it a number of times on fourth down, and he didn't have any in-game. The in-game stuff worked really beautifully. The going for it on fourth down when he needed to, calling all those runs like he did against Penn State. He deserves the credit. He deserves those wins. So I think everybody that's watching this would agree with me. I had to take a step back for a second. I'm like, well, does he really? And I'm like, yeah, he does. He does get those wins. What I think is going to be interesting is when Sharon Moore gets into the season, and let's say they're out at USC and USC's ranked, or whoever. Maybe it's not till later in the year against Ohio State. When they put up the graphic on Sharon Moore, will they include that he is 2-0 against Ohio State? I think that if you're in a TV producer and you're working there, they will have this quick discussion. Does he get those wins or not? And I think that they're going to say, yes, he gets those. However, I do think on TV, they'll put a little asterisk. And the asterisk will say 2023, fill in for Jim Harbaugh. They'll probably put fill in for Jim Harbaugh, who was suspended. And, you could say, that's true. So, but I do think they'll put a little tagline. I think there will be a little asterisk. It's not that big of a deal, but he does get those wins. So even though he's just heading into his second year as a head coach, he's got 2 wins over Ohio State. Oh, they were ranked number 2 last year. 2 top 10 wins over Ohio State. 1 top 5, 1 top 10, and then Penn State was a top 10 team. So he's got 3 victories over top 10 teams, and he's just heading into his second year. That's a nice feather in his cap that when people are doing the rankings, I wonder what they think about. Because if you do look at it like that, you say, Jonathan Smith? How are you putting Jonathan Smith in front of Sharon Moore? Jonathan Smith doesn't have as many key victories as Sharon does, and he's been coaching a lot longer. So that was just something that crossed my mind that I wanted to tell all of you about and see what you thought about it. Now, there is some news before we get to basketball, and I'll get some of the feedback coming up here. And the feedback had to do, the news had to do with Michigan and a couple moves that they made today. And this is from MLive. Sharon Moore has extended a half dozen head coaches, and he gave Steve Casula, the tight ends coach, the promotion and raise. He is now tight ends coach and co-offensive coordinator. And with that he gets a raise. And you can say, you remember back to the Harbaugh days, you have these coordinators, and then I was going to say Joel Klatt got mad. I think Joel Klatt did get mad. I think other people got mad too, because they'd say, look, you can only really have one guy calling the play. The other, this is just a name only, just a title. You give a guy a raise and he's got the title. Those are nice things on the resume. But really, when it comes down to game day, you can only have one guy calling the plays, except Harbaugh wasn't giving into any of that. He's like, nope. We're changing it. He didn't say how the plan went. And somebody like Joel Klatt was like, come on, there's no way you could have this. He gets a chance to speak to the coordinators, and the coordinators like, no, we're not telling you how we do it. We are co-offensive coordinators. And so Sharon, learning from his mentor, giving Casula that title, which is nice for Casula. Now, I did think, in addition to, having the nice title and getting a raise, those are nice things for the Casula family. That's a little chunk of change in your pocket. Could it have to do with when Moore is inevitably suspended, maybe for the 2 games for Central and Nebraska? We'll find out in, 2.5 weeks, I think, maybe sooner. but I think we'll find out if they're going to accept that suspension. Is this something getting in where you could then have Chip Lindsey be the head coach and then, oh, well, Casula's the offensive coordinator. And it just works nice that way because you already have the title. And if you're thinking about, well, who would Sharon Moore have coach when he has to step aside for those 2 weeks, whatever 2 games are going to be right now, if they accept that the Central and Nebraska game, will it be Chip Lindsey? And then Casula could actually call the plays there. Maybe. I would not rule that out. I had thought myself about how I would go about it. And you naturally go to the coordinators. Well, Lindsey's just a first-year head coordinator this year. He's debuting for Michigan. Is that really going to be the guy that they turn over to be the head coach? I thought no. I want Lindsey standing next to who I think is going to be Bryce Underwood, a just turned 18-year-old quarterback who's going to be starting for Michigan. I want all of his attention on Underwood. I don't want him thinking about how he's going to be calling, how he has to be the head coach and all these additional responsibilities. Just focus on Underwood and the offense. Now you got the co-offensive coordinator. Maybe that's something, maybe not. My thinking was, well, then you go over on the defensive side, and this will be Wink's second year. But Wink, to me, if I was Sharon Moore, I would ask Wink, hey, Wink, do you want to be the head coach? Because you know that I'm going to have to sit down 2 games. Wink's never been a head coach. Maybe that's something that he would really want. And if he really wanted it, then I would let Wink do it. Now, Wink might say, Sharon, I'll do whatever you want. What's best for this team? That's what you want to hear from your coaches. And with that, Sharon still might say, oh, well, Wink, I want you to be the head coach. I think, all of the other coordinators that you have, all of the other coaches on the defensive side have all been coordinators before. So we'll make it happen for 2 weeks. You be the head coach. That's how the first thing that I would do, I would go to Wink. My second option, which I know has been mentioned, is Biff Poggi, the Harbaugh consigliere, who went out and went down to Charlotte and was the head coach for a couple of years. So he has head coaching experience. He's on the Michigan staff. And then you don't have to worry about, upsetting the apple cart at all. You've got Poggi. Everybody knows him. He just pops on the headset for 2 games. And during that 2 weeks, everybody stays with their same thing. You get that continuity. And there you go. But now you've got this wrinkle with Casula being the co-offensive coordinator. Maybe that matters. Maybe Sharon Moore will do exactly what I said, and he'll go to Wink and ask him what if he wants to do it. And then the third option there would be Poggi. So I think it's going to be one of those 3 things. You want to go off the board yourself? Go ahead. But I think, Poggi, Wink, or Lindsey. Those are the guesses for me. Those are the reasons. And I just went through all of it. So that's how I see it. Tony Elford and Lou Esposito also got raises, but they didn't get additional titles. But hey, here's an extra 25, 50 grand. And then a couple other coaches got extended, which is is guaranteed money. So even though it's not a raise, you get an extension, you're feeling pretty good. And one of those was Ron Bellamy. Ron Bellamy feeling pretty good. Did not get the raise, but also got an extra year. So you're feeling good about that. So that's it. You're up to speed on all of that. Before we go to basketball, I wanted to answer and get to the feedback. And oftentimes when I go online, there are accounts that are dedicated to counting the days since Michigan last lost to Ohio State. I was thinking about saying that a better way. How many days Michigan has been victorious? Or no, it's how many days since OSU beat Michigan, and you get that COVID year, which I'm sure Ohio State it's This countdown is great because Michigan has won 4 in a row, and we could sit here and maybe all summer I will spend one segment just looking back at the 4 games. Every show, maybe I'll do that. Then I'm here about it. It's great to look back on. This last one was more unexpected than any of them, and they were able to get it done, beating OSU on the road, 13-10, which was crazy, but fair. The great one of the great parts that really burns, I know Ohio State fans, is that Ohio State the COVID year that they didn't play. Ohio State would have been a 30-point favorite in that game if they did everything, and they didn't. So Ohio State's like we would have got that victory. That's what they think, and you understand why they're thinking that way. But they didn't play, so Michigan gets to tack on that 365, to the number, and that's gotta, Ohio State fans got to look at that one and they got to shake the one was bad, 2, fool me twice, and then 3, they're just beside themselves. And then this year, even though they won the Natty, it's still in the back of the mind like, the Natty was great, but we lost to Michigan. And I got to look at this stupid number. I'm sure it kills them. But today is one of those numbers. Ferris, I'm going to take his word for that it's been 1,999 days since Ohio State beat Michigan in football. And Ferris says, great song by Prince. And then also the number of days since OSU beat Michigan in football. I remember when I think 1999, the song by Prince came out. Was it I'm trying to remember all of the different albums. What's the album called? 1999. Now I forget. But it wasn't like that song came out in 1998 or 1997. I think it came out in some like 85 or something. We're going to party like it's 99. And the song would come out and you think, oh, what will I be doing in 1999? I'll be partying. It'll be great. And the song was great in 1999, but everybody was so worried about Y2K, like their computers were going to take over the world and everything was going to crash. And then nothing happened there. So memories, Prince. I think there was an album called 1999, wasn't there? And it came out in 80 something. I don't know. Let's see what CFADC has to say. He says the Alabama team literally had all of their starters and nothing but 4 or 5 stars on their team. That was a good and legitimate win, especially considering a number of our top players opted out. No doubt the Alabama win was absolutely great. Smash, adding that Michigan beat Ohio State and Alabama twice, each in a 14-month span. That'll probably never happen again. Ferris following up and has a question. Is the NCAA going away? Will Michigan outlast the NCAA, or is the NCAA just getting rebranded to the threat of a hammer is still there? Well, everybody wants the NCAA to go away, and people have predicted that it will. I mean, you still do have to have a governing body. You do have to have the rules, and you do have to have, someone to then be the bad guy. This is the Committee on Infractions right now. And so, no, I don't think they're ever going away. I think they will be there. And what I would like, if I take it all, it's hard to do, take it all and set it over here with what's going on with Michigan. They need to make the process, what do they say, streamline the process having things play out a year or 2 or 3, I mean, and then there's, you can do this and you can do that. Um, they need to figure that out a better way than what is going on right now. So that's it. Cut from a different cloth says when a team doesn't have a good quarterback, it's a major problem. Look at Clemson with no D, Watson, and no Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, it's a good point. When you don't have a quarterback, you don't got much. When you're out there, not many teams. I think about watching the NFL almost every year. Everybody you're watching, and then 3 or 4 quarterbacks go down, and then you're watching a Thursday night game with some guys, and you're like, wow. We got Cooper Rush out there, and it's tough. Who's that one guy from Oklahoma State? Brandon Weeden, I think. He was out there for 3 or 4 years when it would get down there. Or Danny DeVito, or whatever his name was, from the Giants for a couple of years. Giants got a bunch of them. Yeah, and that's just the pros. You're right. You don't have a good quarterback, it is a major problem. No doubt. Michigan is a playoff team last year if they had an average quarterback. So they needed 2 more wins. Were they beating Indiana, which they lost to by 5? Let's hold on to that one. They lost to Illinois by 14. That game was on the road. Both of those games are on the road. Washington was that one. Tuttle was good for a second. Maybe the Washington game. Give him that one. So then it comes down to beating Indiana, Oregon, or Illinois. Yeah. I mean, maybe. That sounds good, but I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure that Michigan is a playoff team, but that's it. Brent says Ohio State not winning with Bryce as a quarterback. So you're saying as long as Bryce is playing quarterback, Ohio State's not going to win. So that would be this year, maybe. That would be 5 in a row. Sounds crazy, but possible. Then next year, back at Bryce, 6 straight, 7. Could be possibly 7 is what you're saying, Brent. Be nice. Be amazing. All of that. Sam wants to know when the last time a coach beat Alabama twice in the same year. Sharon Moore did. Good points. Corey's vote is for Poggi. When it comes down to it, Smash is on a run here. Corey saying Ohio fans are over in the corner saying we don't care. We won the national championship. I've watched it play out. I don't go through. I don't know if anyone has time to go through every single tweet between Michigan and Ohio State fans, but sometimes I go through some of them. But this particular topic about Ohio State's natty light compared to Michigan's in 23, and then the two sides just go back and forth, and Ohio State claiming that no, this is great, and everything. It doesn't matter, but of course, the national championship I'm sure was great for them, but yeah, it does sit there. I'm not here. That's an off season. Those are fun things to go about. And I know this doesn't help anyone's argument with this, but I do remember when Michigan lost to Michigan State in 2021. I remember when the game was 30-30. I tweeted out, no matter what happens, this has been a great game. It's a very entertaining game. This is what college football is all about, something like that. And then Michigan lost that game. And then nobody was sitting around talking about what a great game it was, talking about, getting screwed with Aiden Hutchinson and all these things that needed to go right for Michigan State. But it was a terrible loss. But then Michigan beat Penn State, beat Ohio State, and then they won the Big Ten, validating their win over Ohio State, won the Big Ten for the first time in whatever it was, 20 years, 16, 17 years. and then went to the college football playoff. Why wasn't that an argument? Was Michigan State fans claiming that, oh, you guys had a good year, but you lost to us? It only really works. I don't remember that. Maybe they were. I remember for that week it sucked, but then Michigan got the win against Penn State, and I was like, hey, it's not that bad. And then they beat Ohio State, and that was a distant memory, losing to Michigan State. But I'm not trying to rationalize Ohio State losing to Michigan and then feeling good. Oh, let's see. The Prince song was also an album. It was from 1982. That's good. Looking out here at 82. And that album was also the one that they made into the movie. Which was, was a pretty good movie back in the day. Everybody saw that. Brent making the prediction that Illinois is going to beat Ohio State. Hey, all right. I'm buying it. So that's where I'm at. Thanks for the feedback with all of that. I'm going to get to basketball. Let me first see if I have this in here. Oh, yeah, I had that bowl game. Got Jerome. There he is. There's Yaxel. I get to that. Before I talk about Yaxel, I want to tell everyone that the Maize and Blue Review is going to be here for the foreseeable future. It is awesome to get in to the Maize and Blue Review. You can also, you got more buzzers and whistles coming with a subscription to the Maize and Blue Review. Go to michigan.rivals.com and you can see all the treats that are waiting for you there. It's great to be in there. You get to know about recruiting and everything else that is going on. The football team all day, all night. The conversations are going, and it'll be great to see you over there, no doubt. So here he is. There he is, Yaxel. And Yaxel, as everyone knows, has worked out at the combine. There have been some different reports. Some, he looks great. Others not so, thinking so much. You look at all the different mock drafts. You get him anywhere. You get him late in the first round. He did have a quote recently saying he wanted to be inside the top 20 or the decision was going to be easy for him, which made me think, ooh, being in the first round and a guarantee or feeling like you're being the first 35, he could be gone. But then when he said 20, that seemed like more of an indication that he would not be getting those guarantees and he'd end up at Michigan. That's how I feel. When I look at it, I think he'll be somewhere between 25 and 35. But the unpredictability with the draft and everything, I'll extend it to 5 on each side. I think he's going to go somewhere between 20 and 40. And if he ends up closer to 20, he'll have made a pretty good decision. He's got to feel really good about it. But if he goes the other way, I'm not sure. And then he could possibly not get a guaranteed contract. He might not be feeling very good at all. It'd be that nightmare scenario. I don't know how much of a nightmare. He's still going to be in the league, but he wouldn't have a guaranteed contract, but he would be down there in the G League. So you really have to listen to your agent, and you really hope that agent can sift through the smoke of the guarantees for teams. They're saying, if you're there at 23, you're ours. But, there's so many moving parts there. So he's got to come up with it. When he says, I don't like 50-50 because I like to at least lean one way or the other. He feels like he's 50-50. And I think if he's 50-50, I think that is Michigan. In that it's not that bad if you want to look at it as a consolation prize. If you're not going to get that guarantee, you are getting tons of money from Michigan to come in. He is, if you're making the list of, this is positive and negatives, the positives, playing in the big, you get money from Michigan, millions of dollars. So he's going to be a millionaire. So he's got that. And then you get the college experience. There's one thing about going to UAB It's completely different being able to play in a major power conference. You play at Michigan, you're playing in the Big Ten, in the NCAA tournament, likely. Being the star, you go from where, okay, people talked about you at UAB, but now you're front page, you're talked about nonstop. There is value to that. And there really is. If however confident you are in your own skill set, you go out there and do it on a bigger stage. The chances that he could be a lottery pick if he comes out and continues to show what he can do, the difference between being a lottery pick and being, pick 28, how much is that? $10 million? So, you can sit around thinking about it all day. Well, he comes back, let's say he gets $2 million from Michigan. But if he went to the pros and it was a guaranteed 5, boy, that's leaving 3 on the table. But if he moved up, he could make 10. You could also say, well, his clock will be ticking, all of these different things. He'll have a year, he'll be that much closer to a free agency and all those other things. All those things will be true. I think people trying to predict this when it's a 50-50 type situation, it's tough. I do know this. If he comes to Michigan, it puts Michigan as, Purdue is the favorite with everything that they have coming back, but they're right there. Michigan to be right there. Michigan is a top 10 team heading into the college basketball season. It'll be a top 25 team. Fringe top 25 team, if it's not Yaxel, but one player in the mold of Yaxel really vaults Michigan up the polls and the expectations and everything else, and you go from thinking, hey, make the tournament like last year, pretty good, to hey, maybe they can put together and have a special season. So that's what I'm looking at. That's how I see it, and that's where I'm at. Let's go and see where the feedback left off, and then we will read some of those. Let's go. Corey's talking about Prince. He says, in his opinion, the greatest all-around artist. Yeah, I really like Prince. So, I liked the movie that we were talking about. I always remember, it was pretty... One, is it Apollonia that he had on the back of his bike? It was, I think movie's coming out in the early 80s. And then you had Morris Day and the Time, and then you had Prince. Man, I went from, okay, you little Prince, a little red Corvette, to watching that movie. I was a big fan of Prince then. Yeah. And then Prince all the way through. The Prince at the Super Bowl. And then there was Prince at when he went to a symbol, which I thought was a little weird. And then for the longest time, people thought that they lumped Prince and Michael Jackson together, and they thought, I don't know, whatever they kind of thought Prince was like Michael Jackson. And then Michael got outed for all these things, and Prince was like, you thought I was like Michael Jackson? I don't know. There was I gotta say, there's a song by Prince. Maybe I'll have to go through and listen to the entire catalog. It's one of my favorite songs, and I don't know what the name of it is, and yet I really like it. I've never been able to pin that down. But you go through and you look at he's got a big time catalog. And the one thing I didn't know about Prince is that people would say, he's a great guitar player. I'd say, okay, all right. So one thing about, okay, he can play the guitar. But then you heard like the great guitarists would be like, oh yeah, Prince he's as good as anyone. He's one of the greatest. So yeah, Prince is pretty good. Cut from a different cloth, was not impressed at all with OSU winning the Natty last year. Team was loaded with stars. They were one of the teams that spent the most via NIL to get their players. What did they overcome? The team was loaded. Hey, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not arguing. I'm not stepping up for Ohio State. It's crazy how the teams try to guarantee these players, but then they don't own up for. Yeah. Good to see Ripstar. Rip kind of comes in halfway through the show. Oh, sometimes he's here at the beginning. It's nice to see him in there. Corey thinks Yaxel's coming to Michigan. It would be nice. Good to see U of M on here. If they knew where they were getting drafted, they know where they're getting drafted. I know agents, and my childhood friend was a top 3 pick in the NBA. Ooh, top 3. Your childhood friend was Chris Webber? Who else would cut from a different cloth? Top 3. Who was Jackson? Who was from Detroit? He ended up being was he 5? I don't know. Trying to guess who your best friend or your childhood friend was. I had a childhood friend that was the number 1 pick overall in the NHL draft. How about that? Number 1 overall. Just got lucky. I had nothing to do with it. Just went to the same school as he did. Corey says they always say that, but draft day comes around, it turns out different. Yeah, all this back to you might think, and teams can make all the promises in the world, but let's just say you're sitting there at 22, and you're like, oh yeah, if Yaxel's there, we're taking him. But then they have their board. They're not just have all their eyes on Yaxel. What if somebody does some kind of free fall, which happens almost every draft, someone that looks like they're going to be in the lottery, and they fall down there, they're 22, you say, oh, sorry. Guys slide, So do you need 2 or 3 teams to give you guarantees? And then you feel like, okay, now I really feel like I'm going to go 22, 23, or 24. Pretty crazy. Vanity. Yeah, Purple Rain. Purple Rain's still, little darling Nikki. That's the Purple Rain, that movie. Morris Day's out there, he's doing the time, and he is cool, and everybody likes him. And old Prince just sitting back there, all shy and everything. You're like, he really does look like the underdog. Morris Day looks like the 5-star, but then Prince gets up there. Wasn't it the club manager goes up to him and tells him, "Come on. Stop with all this making out with your guitar and everything. Get up there and play." And then he busts out Purple Rain, and then he takes and he drops the mic on Morris Day, which is amazing. I don't know if that movie holds up. Cut from a different cloth is from the East Coast, giving me a little hint. Well, while we're just kicking things around, I was at the grocery store today, and I didn't know if I got tariffed or what happened, but I get this coupon that I got to spend $20 to use, just a $2 coupon. So once a month, I crank the bill. $20 is pretty easy. You only have to buy like 3 things. You can get there pretty easy, but whatever. So, I grabbed a few things, and then at the door there were cherries, and it said $10 for the cherries. I love cherries. So I grabbed the cherries, and then when I got up there, the guy's like $38. I thought, this guy, $38. I've got like 3 things here. Are you really $38? And so I looked at the receipt. They were $10 a pound for these cherries. I bought a bag of cherries, and they were $25. And I thought, man, I know people complain all the time when they go to the grocery store. I talked to my mom. She's like, everything's like that. But I'm thinking, are cherries really $25 for a bag? And then I looked on them, and I thought, I bet these cherries are going to say they're from Canada. This is Canada getting us back. But no, they were from California. Why are our cherries in Michigan? I don't understand. This is a local store in Ann Arbor. I thought the cherries were going to be from, you think, they're from Traverse City. How come cherries from Traverse City? How come they're bringing them in from California, and then they're $10 a bag? I mean, that's not even a tariff. That's just getting hit over the head. with maybe it's the gas, but I don't know. I could have drove up to Traverse City myself and spent $25 on cherries, and I think I would have made out. Maybe I should go out there and start selling cherries sitting out on the corner or something. $5 a pound. Maybe I should, I've got all this land out here. Maybe I should start growing some cherries. Actually, I tried growing a cherry tree about 10 years ago and just didn't happen. I luckily I waited before I bought the like netting and everything. So they're like, oh, the birds will go get your cherries. I'm like, well, when that happens, I'll put up this netting to keep the birds away, but it never did materialize. It ended up being a good spot that I used to aim. It was like I had to cut out, it kind of looked like a big green, and right in the middle was this cherry tree. It never grew. Didn't have the right soil in there, and that's it. Should have dug that thing up. You know, they have a guarantee, and I should have brought that cherry tree back. But that's it. That's all. It's too early for Michigan cherries. Okay, that's why they're from California. There you go. You know, no cherry pickers around, so maybe that's why. Okay, yeah, maybe I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it. Didn't think about it from that point. All right, let's guess who cut from a different cloth would have been a friend with East Coast. It's gonna be too tough, I think, to think about. We'll have to do that next time. Next time will be Friday. I'll have an answer maybe at that point, at least a guess. As I sit around, it'll be on my mind. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. We like talking Michigan all day, all night. That's what we do. Recruiting, coaching records, next year, this year, all of it. It's all fair game. We'll see you over there. Everybody have a great day.